You're on.
All right, hello class. Today we're going to be talking about the gender gap that exists in science, and it's not only a problem with gender, but it's also a problem with minorities and kids with disabilities that are disproportionately underrepresented in science and science education. So this is where we got the article. My name is Wilmer Suniga, and this is my partner. And he's going to be talking to you about the second part of the article, which is a solution, but I'm going to be talking to you about the problem. All right, so the problem is most evident in high school, where you see that young women, they show a general lack of interest in science and don't perform as well academically in science as well. So even though in the National Science Education Standards it says that all students should have the opportunity to be scientifically literate, and even though that some teachers and some counselors kind of discourage young women into going into science. So there's this article within the article that talks about, well, the problem doesn't really begin in high school, it begins in elementary school, where you first start to see that young women in elementary school, that they start to show some like negative attitudes towards science, and that carries over into middle school. Once they get into middle school, only those students with like a high test scores in math and science, and also the students that actually like science go into more advanced classes in science. And finally, you get into the high school level, which is what we're going to be teaching, and then you see this huge disparity between the gender gap. That's just a little sentence. So in this article, Janie Oakes, I believe is the author, she talks about the 3 critical factors that contribute to the gender gap. And the first one is opportunity to learn. That is how much exposure they've been, how much exposure they had to math and in science, and also how much encouragement they received to go into more math and science classes. And the second one is achievement, which is how well they do in the courses, like what kind of grades they get. And the last one is the pursuit of science, which is how many opportunities have they had inside and outside of school. So the results from these studies suggest that women do better in more person-to-person interactions than they do in a classroom environment. And so some of them don't like math and science as much because they don't see it conducive towards whatever career field they're going to be going into. So there are exceptions to the rule. As you can see here, there's plenty of women in science. And those women that go into science actually do just as well as men do. And actually, if you take into account all the other classes, they actually have a higher GPA than men do. And so why is this the case? Why do they do better even though there's this gender gap? And it's because if they have more peer support. It's been shown in research that they do better if they have like-minded people that are into going into math and science and have good grades, and they do better in that, so they benefit more than men. So Dan's going to be talking to you about more of the solution.
Right, so how do we deal with this sort of problem? Well, it's simple. To counter negative attitudes and personal disbeliefs among female students, you can promote positive self-efficacy in an inclusive, constructivist learning environment. Wait, what?
Yeah.
What does it mean? Well, I did some Googling. So self-efficacy means like it's a person's belief that they're capable of succeeding in a particular situation. And constructivist learning is a theory where like you learn, you gather knowledge from your own experiences and your ideas, instead of just like reading off a book or something. So what are the requirements of this sort of environment? Well, it has to provide lots of opportunities for discovery while taking into account the different learning styles and approaches the students employ. And also has to make learning a fun and positive experience. And so how do we do that? Well, first of all, yeah, students work with peers. Students are sensitive to peer pressure, and peers have a positive and negative influence in promoting self-efficacy. Compared with individual or competitive learning environments, working cooperatively with peers produces a much more positive experience in learning and increases positive self-esteem and a feeling of success. And you can also increase emphasis on social comparison. What is social comparison? It's like saying, Will here is the smartest kid in this class. Like, you want to avoid that. Because if you avoid that, then you can de-emphasize individual weakness as well as provide more focused meta-cognitive activities, which is good for high-achieving and low-achieving students. Also, like, if you say something like that, like, everyone's gonna hate Will, you know, and we're gonna get giant target sign for all the bullies and stuff. So don't do that. And also, you want to encourage equal participation in both genders. Like, some classes you might see a disparity, like in science. So you have to be aggressive and make sure like both genders participate equally. So make sure to ignore that and call on like girls or guys if there's a big imbalance. Having a good classroom environment. A good classroom environment is very important in promoting self-efficacy. It needs to give students a good sense of belonging, and it has to show students like the task they're doing is relevant. And it has to have good lab experiences. It has to build student curiosity, and have humor, fun. All these contribute to classroom interest and help build self-efficacy. And lastly, there's mastery experiences. These help build a strong sense of self-efficacy also. What is a mastery experience? Well, basically, they're an experience where you master something. So like an example is like, you learn how to ride a bike, but after you learn how to ride a bike, you're a lot less scared of riding bikes and like falling off of them. So you build all that confidence with that mastery experience. So same concept applies here. So like you teach students like a concept that they master, like learning the multiplication table. If they learn that, then they're a lot more confident, like multiplication problem. That helps build their self-confidence. And by creating such an environment, the author should believe that this can help start to close the gender gap in science. Final thoughts, Phil?
Any questions? Everything's crystal clear.
It's for common sense. We good? All right.